Thank you for joining us on Sci-Fi Journal today, StefanVella. Now, you're off to the Star Trek convention in Malta. How did you get involved with that?
Basically, I have been a member with the Sci-Fi Association in Malta, and it all started from an adventure in the sense that I was requested to give my contribution vis-a-vis explaining and researching on the relationship between legal theory and science fiction in general.
Yep.
And obviously, I mean, you cannot enter into this team without actually getting to know Star Trek, because Star Trek has various incidents where this relationship crops up, especially on matters relating to procedures in fair trial, for example. Now, obviously, this paper, which I have to develop for the conference, concerns the justice system in the Cardassian jurisdiction, so to speak.
Okay.
And yes, okay.
Oh, yes, go on.
Yes, and what is interesting in this particular system is basically that the judicial system has that political flavor, inverted commas, which reminds us, especially legal scholars, legal historians, in the Spartan era, where the idea of the trial was not actually justice the way today the West in general understands it to be, but it was more a process wherein a political message is passed over. In this case, the Cardassian system does not believe in the presumption of innocence. You see?
Yes.
But what is interesting is that when you look into Cardassian justice, especially in a particular scenes in Star Trek, you find that the result of the trial is not finding guilt or trying to pass over to mete out retribution, but to punish somebody, for example, for his past political adherences. And this is particularly interesting because if one looks back into Roman law, for example, or rather in instances of Roman justice during various empires, you find this happening, where you had particular exponents, for example, within the Roman political scenario that were tried to be removed and killed because they were politically inconvenient. You understand my point?
I do.
So basically, if we see this Cardassian reality, inverted commas, translated also in common day jurisdictions, in today's jurisdictions, we find this repeat being done in areas where democracy does not prevail, or in areas where you have jurisdictions that have migrated from Soviet regimes, for example, or communist regimes.
Yep.
But have still this mentality that the law courts are there to clear out politically inconvenient exponents. I mean, a case in point is, for example, the present Putin way of conducting trials, for example, where you had uncomfortable exponents that were being processed on charges related to tax evasion, for example.
Yep.
And however, what is interesting also is that this disbelief in how shall I put it, in the right, in the presumption of innocence, is found in countries like such as Palestine, where you have occupation by the Jewish forces, okay, and they use the system of law to give this message, political message of coercion, where they say, listen, we are the bosses here, you either somehow or another tolerate this regime, or if you throw stones to us, we'll put you in jail, whatever is the reason. And we are also, in current days, this idea of having justice done through coercion rather than following the dictates of law and human rights undoubtedly exists in this very day. And the Cardassian reality is not, as the Cardassian reality can be explained also in these instances. And the idea of my paper is precisely this, to explain on the one hand what we actually mean by presumption of innocence. At the same time, explain where the Cardassian justice system does not reflect these principles, and at the same time, draw parallels with existing criminal procedures today and also in the past. And therefore, this brings us back to what we actually mean by science fiction. Science fiction is not an isolated reality. In actual fact, science fiction can help us explain the certain worries of present scholars in public administration, for example.
Yep.
In public policy. A case in point. When you enter into science fiction, for example, there was this worry of having a society which is engineered towards totalitarianism. And if you look into literature, early literature of the forefathers of public administration, we find that these scholars actually were embarking on a project to avoid actually having this reality, and these were academics that had an interest in science fiction, and sometimes they were inspired by Wells, for example.
Yep.
Was definitely an exponent of note in the sci-fi world. And basically, it was this menage, this whole mixage of disciplines and interests that actually pushed me into entering in the world of sci-fi. Because ironically, my first but brief introduction to sci-fi was theology. When I was still studying comparative theology, and when I had to particularly enter into the dynamics of Scientology. Because as you very well know, the predicaments of Scientology shoot it off from sci-fi.
Yes.
Through Hubbard. And
indeed.
It's a very interesting area where the understanding of sci-fi entails a cross-disciplinary knowledge. where it entails that you know very well literary criticism. At the same time, you must know history. You must be also, how shall I put it? You have to have a good understanding of philosophy in its various manifestations. And it is this thing what makes science fiction, in my opinion, interesting. And the fact that we cannot define what we actually mean by science fiction is in itself a challenge. That is my opinion of science fiction.
Fair enough. Okay. So the Cardassian legal system, is there anything, it seems immediately repellent to anyone in the West with the idea of innocent until proven guilty.
Actually, for us, it jars. I mean,
yes. So I guess we can see what's wrong with it. Is there anything right with it?
Sorry?
Is there anything right with it? Does it have any redeeming? Does it have any redeeming features?
What it makes it strange, let me put it that way, is because in Western thought, a person cannot be accused, okay, if, generally speaking, obviously, because there are various, how shall I put it, exceptions to this rule, but generally speaking, okay, in Western legal thought, when you're dealing with criminal offenses, okay, you have to prove the criminal intention of the accused. Now, obviously, in reality, in modern procedural law, you have two truths. You have the truth that comes out from the evidence during the court proceedings. And there is that truth which is shared also by the layman. Now, in reality, what for the court is important is the truth as it emanates from the court proceedings. In this Cardassian justice system, this does not exist, where you are already judged by your thoughts, which, I mean, in our world, this does not make sense. You understand my point? So
I do, yes.
It is the action that is the center of the investigation, but at the same time, the intention is judged only to see whether a person has intended that wrongdoing or not. Now, in Cardassian justice, that does not exist. At the same time, for example, there's the use of torture. Obviously, I do not wish to enter into the big polemic on when
Yes,
torture can be acceptable, at least in the law concerning the war.
Of course.
No, the just laws of war. However, in civilian systems, okay, when we are dealing with civilians, under the standard procedural law, also under the standard criminal law, torture is not accepted as the way and the means of gathering information. At the same time, there are various safeguards where basically the diktat of modern legal thought in the Western world is basically that it is acceptable for liberating a guilty person, but it is never acceptable to have a convicted innocent person.
Yes.
In the Cardassian system, this does not exist.
It would be the reverse.
In the sense that if the system blames you for what they consider to be an offense, because, again, if one had to look into their legal system, it is not a plurilegal system in the sense that you have a common corpus of rules that apply for various situations, which in the modern, especially in the Western world, this does not make sense, because the law is a plurinormative system for one very simple reason, so that it is sure that when you are accused, at least in the criminal law sphere, okay,
Yep.
you are actually accused for doing that action because it is found in a specific provision in the law. And the laws are detailed because they are detailed so that the procedure is so clear, okay, that everybody
Yep.
knows where he stands in front of the court. In
That's
Kardashian
certainly the
system,
idea.
it's the other way around. The system knows where it is, where it stands, but the accused, God forbid. You understand my point? And
I do, yes.
in
Well,
literature as well, we have instances where this scenario is explained. I mean, you have, for example, the trial of Kafka.
yes, of course.
And the trial of Kafka in Kafka is very similar to the system in the Kardashian world.
Okay. Great. Well, on that note, thank you very much for taking the time to join us today, StefanVella.
Yes. Thank you very much. It was an interesting opportunity for me.